Hi, everybody. We're going to start a unit on value. Value is one of the elements that we're going to discuss in this course. And we're going to start out with a couple of very short videos. This will be the first of them. And the reason for that is you're going to get little art kits that you're going to take home and bring to class every time you come. It's going to be your supplies that you're going to use throughout the class. And that's if you're in, if you happen to be watching this video and you're not in my Art Foundation class, that won't be true. But we're going to talk about the materials in the kit. We're also going to talk about value. That's the first of the elements that we're going to discuss. I think it's a good underlying element to support a lot of the other things we're going to do. So I'm going to switch the screen for just a second, and we will talk about value. Okay. And we will discuss the fact that, hopefully you're seeing this, keywords related to value. Value has a lot to do with darkness and lightness. Okay. It can also have a range. So for instance, you can have white or black, lightest, darkest, but there are all sorts of shades of gray in between, and we'll see a little bit more about that in the future. And a lot of times we're going to use, you can't use the elements all by themselves. All of the elements and principles kind of work together to solve whatever problem it is you're trying to solve artistically. So if you want to make something look three-dimensional, it will probably have a light source. You see it as three-dimensional because of the way the light hits it. So light source is another thing that's going to be important to us. The light source will create the degrees or the range of value on an object, and you will imply it when you do your drawings by how dark or how light you mark the paper. Okay. Another thing that comes, and when you use these lights and shadows, it creates a form as opposed to a shape. We'll talk about that too. Light and shadow also creates textures. Every little bump is going to be implied by the way the light hits it and the shadows that it makes. And the more contrast you have, the higher key something will be. And I may have that backwards. The less contrast you have, the darker it'll be. But we'll get into that in the future. Okay, so from there, I'm going to go back to my camera and bring you over to see what we're doing on this piece of paper here. We're going to look at some of the supplies and some of the ways you can get value. First of all, just simple pencils. Okay? You can get values. I'm not going to use a pencil. Well, yeah, I will use a pencil to do this. To get your values, you can choose the pencils that you have. And you're going to have at least a very dark pencil. I'm assuming you have a 2B pencil. And the way people rate the pencils, and the charcoal for that matter, is there's a scale. And say like an HB is the middle of the scale. It goes off in this direction in B, in this direction as H. Okay, H's. The higher the number, the more intense in that direction. So what happens is if you've got graphite, it's going to get softer in this direction. And you might have a 2B, which is what you need to use on a test, and you'll know why in a few minutes. If the lead or the graphite that's in there gets even softer, you might have a 4B, or a 6B would be even softer. The softer that your graphite gets, the darker your line is going to get. Okay? Going this way, if you have a 2H, okay, it's a harder material, so it's going to make a softer mark. We'll put mark down here, material up here. Okay. So when you go this way, if you go to 4H, it's going to be a harder material. It'll cut into the surface of the paper if you push too hard and leave a little divot there that, you know, your charcoal might pick up funny. But if you want to do like just a light drawing that you're not going to see in the end result, say you're an architect or you're somebody who's going to ink it in later, but you want to just make sure you get the proportions right, you might use a very light 4H pencil that has, softer would go this way now that we've added to this. And this would be harder going this way. Okay, 6H. Okay, so in your kit, I didn't give you a 4H, but I'll give you some when we're in class and we're working on this. A 4H pencil, if I push with the same pressure and I use a 4H pencil, it's going to be pretty light. If I take a 6B pencil, or in this case it's an ebony pencil, and I push with the same pressure, it's a much softer material. It's going to adhere to the paper a lot faster. It's going to make a darker mark. Within that range of pencils, you can push harder and lighter and get a real range of value. Okay? So keep in mind, that's why you use a 2B pencil when you take a test. It needs to be a soft enough material to make a dark enough line for the computers to read. If you want to get a full range of what we see from black to white, you would be using a 6B or something that gives you a dark mark easily without a lot of pressure. You're never, no matter how hard I push, I'm never going to get as dark as a 6B will make with a 4H. Okay? Something else that we might be working with in this class are water-soluble pencils and sticks. Okay? These do the same thing, only you can take a paintbrush with just a little bit of water and make it look more like a painting than a drawing. Okay? You kind of have to play with it to get the hang of it, but just know that these materials will do the same thing. And if you look at this one, I don't know where it is. It's up there. You can see, maybe you can see that that says 2B on it. Okay, there we go. We got to get the focus right there. This is a 2B. This one is a 9B. If you can see that. So you'll see that in pencils. The other place you're going to see that is with charcoal. Now, the charcoal that we use, we're going to have it in 3 different forms. So these would say 2B, 6B. This one's a 4B. Okay. Same deal. They make different darknesses. They're all going to be darker than pencil. You can push to different degrees to get different lightnesses and darknesses and make it work. But there'll be times where you might be better off with a 2B and you might be better off with a 6B. Okay. That's one thing we're going to do with charcoal. There are 2 other kinds of charcoal that we're going to talk about coming up, and when we get past the little exercises and labs and get into some artwork. This is called vine charcoal. Okay? Vine charcoal and compressed charcoal. Okay? This is compressed. This is a much cooler, darker black. The vine charcoal is a little softer. And they work a little differently. Just pushing on this a little tiny bit is going to make that a very soft mark. Not that you always want to push on it, but if you do, it gets much softer. This, you can do that too, but it's just going to be a little darker and deeper. Okay? So there's a range of values down on this paper. Okay? The other thing to keep in mind is with the vine charcoal, sorry about the shadows here. I have a light that's not working. You can carve into it with an eraser and bring it back to white if you wanted to. So I would tend to start out with the vine charcoal and work my way up in the deepest, darkest shadows to the compressed charcoal. This, you can get in there and make it lighter. It's just never going to be quite the white of the paper. Okay, so those are the three different kinds of charcoals: the pencil, the vine charcoal, or sometimes it's called willow, and the compressed charcoal. Okay, so those are ways that you can get a kind of casual, easy range of value. The other way we can get range of value, and we're going to practice this at some point, is with ink. So say you only have ink. You don't have a pencil and you don't have charcoal. You can use a pencil and create or imply a range of values by doing cross-hatching or hatching or pointillism. Hatching, just regular hatching, would be drawing lines over and over. Now, the tighter you put those lines together, the darker it's going to appear. Okay? That's one way to do it. Okay? The other thing to consider is that you can use a thicker mark when you make your lines, and you can get a different degree of darkness. And these pens, when they're really sharp, can get kind of thin, but you can make them further apart and imply that that's darker there, and when they're up tight together, it's lighter. Then the lines don't always have to be straight. You can use lines that are curved if you are making a sphere. This really isn't a sphere. I was going to try and do it without using, or we can do one that's even just kind of squiggly. All right, the more I go over them, this is kind of getting into cross-hatching, the darker that area is going to be, okay? You could do them nice and evenly too, like you could have a sphere and have some more self-control than I did on that one, okay? Cross-hatching is basically doing the same sort of thing, only you cross your hatches. And you can get darker and lighter by how close you put them together and how many times you overlay them. That'll give you a range. You can even do lines and make something look rounded by angling the way your lines. I'm not doing that now really, but you can. So this is cross hatching. This is just hatching. This one up here. Pointillism is the same sort of thing. If you think about a newspaper, the way they've made newspapers where it's really just ink with black dots. If you had a black and white photo, the dots are closer together where they want it to be dark. They're further apart where they want it to be lighter. You see that in cartoons too. Roy Lichtenstein's a good example, his work. You see that very clearly because it's very big. But you can make them as dark or as light. The shadow's going to make me crazy. Okay, and that's pointillism. So you can get a range of values that way as well. Okay, now the reason I'm telling you all that is one of your assignments, a quick little exercise that you're going to do over time, is you're going to do a value chart, and you're going to practice, just play with using pencils to do it one time, charcoal to use it another time, hatching, and pointillism. Now, the challenge for you will, number one, be going from the darkest dark to the lightest light. That's not actually white. That's like maybe 10% black, maybe not even down at the bottom. Okay? You want to get that full range of values from black to white. The other thing you want to do is you want to try and match as best you can going across the page, so that when you use pencil, you'd probably use, let's check that 9B at the top. I don't know if you're going to have a 9B handy, but I don't know how many of them we have. Of course, it's the last one I pick up. You would start out with the 9B up here, and when you squint and you look across this page, whether it's the pointillism or the hatching or the pencil or the charcoal, your darknesses should match going this way. When you squint, this should look as dark as that. And the charcoal, the same thing. You'd start with the compressed because we know that's going to make the darkest mark. You want to be kind of neat, but this isn't about the neatness. This is about getting the concept. Okay. And then you probably wouldn't want to use the compressed charcoal when you get down and you're trying to make 10% gray. You'd probably use a very light willow. Okay. Hatching, same deal. You could start out with a thicker, and you could do cross hatching on this. You could practically just do it straight black for the top one and get thinner and thinner as you get down. It's kind of cheating if you just scribble it in black, and then as you're working your way down, you really kind of have to squint. And it might be easier to do this with the thinner marker. I'm going to give you a fine and an ultra fine. So if you're down here and you're squinting and trying to get this one, you're probably going to work. Of course, mine's from that ink. You're probably going to want to do something more like that. This is more implied than because it's really covering. You kind of look at it at a distance. The whites mix with the blacks, and you're going to see different degrees of darks and lights. So if we tighten this one up, and you can, again, cross hatch this if you want. You see that this one, the lines are just that much closer together, so it appears just that much darker. Okay? And you're going to try and match going this way, as well as get a good range of lightness and darkness going that way. Same deal with this one. It's going to take a little longer to do this one, so I'm not going to make you watch it on the video. But same deal. More dots is darker, less dots is lighter. Okay? If you guys have any questions, let me know. You can always, I'll leave the Google Meets open, and you can check in with me if you have any questions on that. Okay? Have a great day.